For Black boys in the United States, wealth and family structure do not level the playing field. Our mom can be single parents or married. Our parents can be rich or poor. High levels of educational attainment matter less for us than they do for Black women, and white men. Race and gender are such enormous and damning factors in the lives of Black men than the specific circumstances of our childhood. Our family backgrounds, our intelligence actually do a lot less work and matter a lot less for us over the long haul of our lives than they do for every other group in this country. That's a powerful excerpt from a new book, My Seven Black Fathers, a young activist memoir of race, family, and the mentors who made him whole by Will Jawando. His story and the author coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
Please welcome activist, civil rights attorney, and candidate running for re-election as an at-large candidate to the Montgomery County, Maryland County Council, Will Jawando. Good morning and welcome, Will.
Good morning. It's great to be with you, Areva.
Well, first, congratulations on the book. It just came out, I know, a little over a month ago in May or so.
Yes.
And so far, the reviews have been incredible. How does it feel to be a published and successful author?
You know, it's a surreal feeling. I'm a civil rights lawyer, so, my writing has been very different for most of my life, and, stepping into the other side of my brain and then also going deep into my personal life, because it's a very personal story, right, about my life, and but has the sociological aspects that you talked about in the lead-in. It's been very humbling, and I'm glad it's having impact on a whole range of people. So I know you're old hat at this, but it's still pretty. I'm still pinching myself.
Well, I interview a lot of authors, and many like you that tell very personal stories about their history. They tell stories about their family relationships. And sometimes I've talked to authors who have said that telling their own story, because it does involve the stories of family members and friends, can be painful on different levels, because not just for them,
right,
but exposing something in the lives of their loved ones. So what was that like for you, telling the story, not just of you growing up, but it's also the story of your mom and your dad, their divorce, and you being estranged from your dad? How did your mom and dad feel about you telling their stories as you were telling your own story?
Well, it's you're right. It doesn't just impact you. And, you think about how it's going to impact the folks in your life. And the way this book is structured, it's, my biological father who passed away in 2017. And I tell that story. So he obviously didn't know, but my mother's still around, my stepfather, who's one of my seven Black fathers, these other men. I had to interview the ones that are alive, and 5 of these 7 are alive. And then there's a whole bunch of other people you talk about that are part of our daily lives. And I wanted to be deep and real enough so that it would impact the reader and get the point across. But then you have to make these decisions about, like, wow, you got to relive it yourself personally, but also how is this going to impact them? And I erred on the side of just being fully transparent, because I think to get to the level of connection that I'm hoping this book will, and that I think it is, I wanted to be real about what happened. And you got to tell everything. You got to tell the bad, the good, the ugly, and everything in between.
So it is a memoir. So you do, as you say, tell your personal story. And one of the stories that's so powerful in the book is the friendship you had with this teenager that you met, that you guys bonded over basketball. And his story ends tragically. He's shot. I won't tell the whole story about him, but how was it? Obviously, he's deceased, so you weren't able to interview him, but I imagine his family, members of his family are still living. Did you talk to his family about how you were going to tell the story of your friendship and that relationship?
I tried to find his mom. His dad was not around, and it's one of the premises of the book, right? That I grew up in a zip code and a place where there were a higher percentage of Black working class fathers in them. And though I was estranged from my father, I describe him as an absent presence. I had access to these men, right? And they saved my life. And Kalfani, my friend, didn't. He didn't have access to these men or his own biological father. His mother moved back to Jamaica when he was killed. I think it was too much for her, so I have not been able to get in touch with her. So it's mostly been from my memory of him. We meet in the 5th grade on the playground, and are friends all the way until the end of high school, until when he loses his life to gun violence. And so it's mostly through my memory and through friends, friends that we had at that time, and others in our community that I retell our story, which is, unfortunately not an uncommon story of those of us who have lost people to circumstances in their lives. And I think if he had these mentors and father figures, he would still be here.
So the book is, titled My 7 Black Fathers, and it's really about these 7 men who are father figures to you and mentors to you. Why this book, and why in this moment?
Yeah, I really, I don't think I could have written it the way I wrote it at any other time in our history. We've all gone through so much. I wrote this during the pandemic, and if you're Black, we had at least 3 pandemics, the COVID-19, the economic fallout. 40% of Black businesses disappeared during one point during COVID. And I'm dealing with all that on my official side, trying to meet those needs. But then the racial and social justice moment, the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, the devaluing of Black life. I really wanted to write something affirmative, that there's something that we have within ourselves, particularly all of us, but particularly Black men and boys, to engage, to be intentional, to father, to mother, to aunt, to uncle, and to save the lives of our people in the midst of this systemic racism and system that we're in. And so I wanted to tell that affirmative story. So it really was healing for me to tell it. It was, it was also difficult, but to write it during this period of time where we need solutions, where we need healing and answers. I feel like this is a part of that within our own community that we have agency over. And that doesn't mean we don't solve the systemic things. We absolutely have to. That's my day job. But we have something that we can do as well.
And who will, in your estimations, like the audience that you think this book will resonate the most with? So as you're writing and telling this very personal story of you and Kalfani and being reunited in some ways with your biological dad, who were you thinking about as the reader?
This is primarily, like when you write, you have a primary audience and secondary. I think one, it connects with everybody. And I've seen that on my tour, being a month and a half in, an elderly white woman at Harvard bookstore came up to me and said, this reminded me that I have to be intentional with mentoring. And, but obviously the primary audience here, this is, I described the book, this is a love letter to Black men and boys. There is so little said, who are half of the Black family, by the way. And so by extension, Black families, there's so little written about us. And when it is, it's often negative. We have, because of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow and the dehumanization that was necessitated to keep those systems alive, I think too often we don't get to peer beyond the window or behind the glass of the inner lives of Black folks in general, but particularly Black men and boys. And I really want that population to say, you are value, you have something to give, you are worthy of receiving it. And when you do that, when we engage with each other, it literally can save our lives and put us on a trajectory for success. And so that would be the primary audience. But I think there's lessons that are universal in here. How many of us are dealing with the issue with a parent or a loved one and need to reconcile? How many of us have 7 people that we could think of? Who are your 7 that poured into you, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, that gave you what you needed to be who you are? We all have those people. So I think there's universality in the story, but there's also obviously a very special message for Black men and boys.
So Well, you said that you think Kelfani, your childhood friend who you were friends with through high school, who then lost his life to gun violence, that his life may have been different if his dad had been in his house or been in his life. What do you say to those Black women that push back on that narrative? Because we know that over 50, maybe as many as 57% of Black children live in houses where fathers aren't physically present. Not to say they're not present in their lives, but they're not present in the household. And you have Black women, carrying that load, being both mother and then sometimes father, but being the primary parent in those situations. So sometimes Black women take offense to this notion that only good kids come from families where there's a mother and father. So a lot of Black women are like, wait, look at all these superstars that we've raised on our own. So what do you say to those women?
Well, I would say, look, we need it all. We need, and when you read the book, there are strong Black women in this book that had a big influence on my life. My mother is, I'm biracial. My mother's white, but she's a woman who had a huge impact on my life. My wife, Michelle, has a huge role in my life. She's a Black woman. So one, we need those two. But I would also say that, so it's not a subtraction, it's an addition, and it doesn't even have to be. This is one of the things, it's not if Kelfani's biological father was present, that would have been nice. But to expand, this book's mission is in part to expand the definition of fatherhood, of motherhood, that these men, I only have one biological father whom I didn't have a relationship with until much later in life. These men step into the void and give me what I need, and help make me whole. And I think that wholeness is that you need the whole picture. And it's not that you can't be a great productive adult and have a good life in a single parent household. You absolutely can. But I think these relationships, this fatherhood, can be your coach. It can be your teacher. Mr. Williams, my first and only Black male teacher that I ever have in fourth grade, my fourth grade math teacher. I know him for 9 months, and I'm talking about him 30 plus years later. These relationships are very different, but they're needed. And so I would say to the single mother, expand your definition. And I think most Black women understand this, that their sons, their daughters, they need this influence of the full panoply of Black family, of Black influence. And so there's a lot of ways to get that. And that doesn't mean, it doesn't diminish what you're giving or what is needed from you. And Lord knows I wouldn't have made it without my mother or my aunties and others. My walk to the Lord, I talk about in this book, when I gave my life to Christ, was because of my stepfather's sister, my Aunt Andrea, a Black woman who starts taking me to church. And so I think there's something in here for everybody, and it's not about subtraction, it's about addition. And I just think the power of these relationships for Black men and boys is particularly powerful, and we just need to make sure we're enabling more of them in whatever form they take.
So these 7 men that you described in the book, you talk about your fourth grade teacher. I know that you describe a relationship you have with a coach, a relationship you have with a Nigerian businessman. All of them kind of represent different stages in your life, and even, a famous man that you have a relationship with, our former President Barack Obama. Is there something that you recommend for young men or young women that may be seeking out mentorship? Because some of these relationships just happen. Like your fourth grade teacher, you didn't go out and seek, Mr. Williams as your mentor. So I think when people hear the word mentor, they think of some very intentional act, right? Where they go out, identify a person, and they make a formal request for that person to mentor them. But you're talking about something different in this book, not just those intentional interactions that we have that may result in a person older or younger pouring something into your life.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, in addition to expanding the definition of fatherhood, we need to expand the definition of mentorship and what that means and how we interact with it, right? And most of these men and people in this book that mentor me, they're not because I sought them out. The rare exception is Barack Obama, when, I tell the story of how I'm going to work for this guy, and I really work hard to get there. But my fourth grade math teacher, certainly my stepfather, who, my mother decides to have a relationship with, To her coworkers, Jay Fletcher, first a reporter at her job, the first openly gay Black man I ever meet, and who has a huge influence on me, helps me deal with my health situation. I was eating unhealthy, I had high blood pressure as a child, and exposes me to the arts. And then Dean, who you talked about, the Nigerian businessman, who's the IT director at my mom's job, who takes me to Nigeria for the first time and exposes me to that side of my culture. I meet them because I'm just in a place where they're at. And so it was, a lot of them were happenstance, and thankfully, but the intentionality comes into play is that they took the time to give me something. Now, they didn't all give me the same thing, and I was open to receiving it. So the advice I would give is, one, expand your definition. Realize that there can be mentoring moments, fathering, mothering moments, and they're all going to give you different things. They don't have to be perfect people. You don't have to be perfect to give it, and be open to receive it, and be open to whenever it comes. And I think, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't have the intentional, relationships, big brother, big sister, boys and girls club. Those are important too. Or hiring more Black male teachers, who are only 2% of the teaching workforce, for example, or Black teachers in general, who are only 8%. We need to do all of those things too, but let's realize that it's more than that. And these relationships can happen in many different contexts. So
again, you described the 7 men who are the subject of the book, and one, as we talked about, is Barack Obama. We all have this image of Barack Obama as being this incredible dad to his 2 daughters. We watched his daughters grow up in the White House. We feel like we know them. They now live in Los Angeles, so many of us run into them, or his daughters do. But what was it like, being under or being mentored by Barack Obama, the person? Tell us something about him that perhaps we would never know just by watching him on television, or even reading his books, or following his illustrious career.
Yeah, well, it was, I'll tell you something interesting about him. You read the book, there's a lot in there, but, he's very competitive. He gets this kind of cool man Luke kind of thing, and he is cool. He knows how to keep his calm, but a lot of our interaction is on the basketball court, especially when I work with them in the White House. We play in a lot of games and all over the city and at Camp David and places. And, one thing about basketball, and I played in high school and college, is someone's character within the first few minutes of playing a competitive sport with them. You know what they're going to be like. And he's competitive, but he's also, a man of integrity. And a lot of the mentoring, to my point earlier, happened in the in-between spaces of doing those activities, like after the game or walking out, or, obviously I talk about one in the book where on my first Father's Day, I spent with him at the White House playing basketball and playing cards and eating, barbecue afterwards. But he's a really, one of the things I was so happy about is because you put these people on a pedestal, you think you know them, and you get let down sometimes. And he never let me down. He was, it was only a positive add to the relationship, because he first starts mentoring me when I don't even know him. And it's another thing, I think, you can mentor people. That's why I'm very conscious as a public official. How do I carry myself? What do I say? Because you can see somebody and model. That's a type of mentorship, modeling after who someone is. Then I got to meet him. I got to know him better, and it got to a different level and deeper. But I would say that Barack Obama was mentoring me, and indeed has mentored many. And just by the way he carries himself, how he conducts his life, and to your earlier point. So I think there's a whole range there. But I saw him get a little angry on the basketball court a couple times. I talked about that in the book, and just gave him he's a full person, and he's competitive, and so I think people will enjoy that side of him too.
Yeah, you're right. I think as a Black community, one thing we were most proud of the Obamas, and not just Barack, but Michelle too, was they were scandal free. So in a world where our politicians often, as you say, let us down, and that letdown often comes in the form of some kind of personal scandal, an affair, or some kind of financial, finagling that may end them in jail or something. That was one of the things as Black people we were just so proud of, the fact, like, okay, no scandals, no side chicks, no financial misappropriation of funding.
And they were looking.
Oh God, we know the scrutiny, but so that we were always like quietly cheering, like, oh my God, like, okay, one woman, 2 kids, intact family. So, that was something that as a community. So when you talk about him mentoring you, that role model, the role model that he was for so many people, so incredibly important. What do you say to young kids, though, Will, who may not have access to someone like Barack Obama or even the IT guy at your mom's job? I mean, you were in a position, not everyone was these 7 fathers. I mean, they're not all Barack Obama, but these were men who, the teacher, the guy that works at your mom's company, these are employed men who are successful in their own right. But we have a lot of kids in urban communities. I mean, you're in Maryland.
Absolutely.
So when I had an opportunity to talk when we met about Baltimore and some other cities where there are kids who literally won't even know a Black male teacher. They may not even know a Black man that has a job. Let's just be real about it. So how do they find their Black father, their mentor?
Yeah, it's a great question, Areva. And one of the things that is embedded in this book is a call to action, right? I talk about in the introduction that I grew up in one of these Black boy safe zones that was identified in this study on race and economic opportunity as one of the 1% zip codes where my mother worked that has a higher percentage of Black working class fathers in them, and that where Black boys and white boys earn similar amounts of money later in life. And so I had the fortune of being around more of these men. But these relationships are happening in the other 99% of the country. The question is how, through policy and personal relationships and programs, do we expand them? And I think there are ways to do it. I'm on the board of iMentor, which is a mentorship organization that works in cities across the country. This one is in Baltimore, and its goal is to establish these relationships, more traditional mentorship relationships with children in the Baltimore City schools. That's a path. We need more people to do that. But we also need to realize that, as I said, we can have these relationships in many, many different ways and many different types of men. All of these men are different. Obviously Barack Obama is one, but all these men have different things. They have different backgrounds. And so if you are a Black man or boy who has something to give, you need to be giving it. Examine what you're doing and step up personally. But then policy-wise, if you're a superintendent or a school board member or you're a citizen who can write to them or advocate for more Black teachers, for more Black male teachers, advocate for more after-school programs. One of the things I talk about in the book is research tells us the hours between 3 and 6 p.m. are the most important for a young person to be on track and not get involved in things. And Kalfani was what I call in the book a decision kid. He had to decide every day when the bell rang where he was going to go because his mother was working 2 jobs. She wasn't around. There wasn't an after-school program. I was a destination kid. I had a place to go. And not only did I have a place to go, it was in a zip code where there were more of these Black men. It was my mom's job, which was my de facto after-school program, where I meet 3 of these men. And so how do we create after school opportunities? That's a budget choice. That's a decision, for school districts across the country. So I think there are things we can do personally and on the policy level and programmatic level to make more of these relationships more likely and increase them, because that's, I think, a key part of it. Because you're right. In some places, in some communities, there are not going to be a dearth of these men. But I will say also, we need to have the mental shift. Everyone has something to give. You don't have to be perfect to mentor or to father or to mother. You have something to give, so give it.
So great. And I think those are, I'm glad you made that distinction, because that's one of the questions I was going to ask you about this decision versus destination kid, because you use that a lot to talk about how kids who have someplace to go have a better chance of having these kinds of positive relationships and influences in their lives. But what if you're that kid? What if you're the kid or the young man or the teenager that finds yourself in one of these deserts, deserts because there isn't high quality, I'm going to call you,
Sure.
Not in the way that my daughters talk about guys on campus. I'm thinking about my daughters talking about high quality black men.
High quality, yeah.
Not that, but but if you're a young black man and you're struggling, you want to do the right thing, but everybody around you seemingly is doing the wrong thing and pulling you into that. How do those young men, those teenagers, those black boys find people like you or like your stepfather or your teacher or your coach? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, that's something I think about a lot. When I was writing the book, it's my 7 black fathers. I obviously had to make the decision to structure it that way. But if you read the introduction where I talk about Kelfani, he could have been one of my 7 black fathers. I meet him in the 5th grade and we're the same age, but he's the popular, smart kid, good at basketball. And he takes me under his wing and helps me deal with bullying and childhood obesity and just lack of confidence. And that was just as critical of a relationship at that time as any. So I would say there's a peer-to-peer role here too that can be helpful for anyone who's in that situation where you might not have that around you. So that would be one aspect. I think your peers, but obviously we're all in need. I think one of the other things I try to demonstrate is that this is a lifelong journey, right? Like the journey to wholeness and needing fathering, mothering, mentorship, it never ends. I meet Mr. Williams at 10 years old. I meet Barack Obama at 25. I still needed every bit of those relationships. And so that it's a lifetime journey, and I still need it. We all still need it. And so it's never too late, I guess, is the message there, that if you haven't found them, don't give up. If they haven't found you, part of this is like a seek and find. Like, you need to be looking and other people need to be looking, and hopefully we can, and then the policies need to align and we can put this system together that will wrap around our young people, even in these desert areas. And we haven't invested enough in it. We haven't thought about it the right way. But it is happening, and I think we just need to nourish it and grow it. And I would say to that young person, don't give up hope. As I mentioned, look to, social media can be good and bad, but there's a lot of good out there, things that people are doing. And like I said, I know people who have been mentored by people they've never met. Right. And there's a lot of ways to get it that way as well. And so I think we need to have everything on the table, and try to, because the problem but the opportunity are equally as big. And I think that's something that I would say to that young person. But it does bother me. I think about it all the time. Like, what could I have done more for Kelfani? Could I have helped him more? You have that survivor's guilt, but I'm just trying to honor his memory by getting this message out there and trying to increase the number of these relationships.
No, that's a beautiful story. And the story, the friendship that you all share when people read the book is a really beautiful friendship. And I think so many people will be able to relate to that friendship, particularly if you grow up in a community like yours. But if viewers out there, if my viewers are if they're, one or more of my viewers are sitting there thinking about mentoring and, they don't quite know how to get it going, what advice do you have for them as to how do they just get started?
Well, one thing I think is to look internal. Like, we all have our 7. Like, who are your 7? Write it down. Like, who are the people, the teachers, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, the barbers, whoever it is that gave you what you needed to get through and to grow and develop. We all have them. So maybe you don't have 7, maybe you have 3, maybe you have 20, but write it down, because I think it starts from mentally making the shift and understanding that we have all had these people. And that doesn't mean they were perfect. That doesn't mean they didn't do bad things too, but they gave us something that helped us become who we are. And then, if they're alive, thank them, go through that process. And then do a self-assessment. Who have you been? What did they give you? And have you been that to other people? Have you done that for others, either intentionally or just not knowing that you did? And then kind of make the next step of, okay, who are the people in my life that my sphere of influence? We all have it. people you encounter in your job, at school, out in the community, and make a decision to pour into those folks in whatever way you can. Not everyone can do a full-time mentorship program. If you can, great, sign up. There's great organizations, fraternities and sororities have them, Big Brother, Big Sister, Boys and Girls Club. Sign up to mentor if you can do that. But if you can't, there are people in your sphere of influence that you can have in an intentional way. It only takes a little bit of intentionality. You see a young man or boy on the street or a young woman, you can stop and say, I really like your backpack. It looks really cool. I hope you had a great day at school. There's stuff you can do. You never know. Imagine if we all did that all day, how those things would accrue over time. And so I think there's big or small, there's something that we can all do.
Yeah, I love that advice, because I think sometimes people feel like they've got to have all this extra time. And they feel like, oh my God, I'm too busy. I already have my own family, or I have work, or I have school. I can't do it. And I was actually helping my daughter because she applied. Both of my daughters are, as you know, in Columbia Law School. And someone reached out to her after we posted they had been admitted, asking her, particularly my daughter that's doing a JD MBA program, how she did it. And my daughter said to me, Mom, I'm really busy. And I says, no, look, this woman doesn't even know you. She just wrote to you on LinkedIn. You have time to respond back to her. And I gave her some ways to do that. And this student who doesn't know her personally has just been so incredibly grateful for the just advice that she's given her, about an application process. So sometimes it may not even feel like a big deal to you, but it could be so meaningful to someone else, what you pour into them. Great book. I want to make sure everybody picks it up again. You don't have to be a father to love this book, My 7 Black Fathers. A great book for parents. Great book for anyone who's thinking about being a parent, anyone who's mentoring someone now or who would love to become a mentor, or someone who, like you said, has been mentored. I think that's such an important message, too, to think about who's poured into our lives, and have we thanked them, and have we acknowledged them. Will, okay, Barack Obama, one of your mentors, aspirations for, I know you are running now, you're in the midst of a campaign for city council in the county where you are in Maryland, but beyond that seat, beyond that local government seat that you already hold and you're running for re-election for, any further political aspirations on the horizon for you? Anything coming up?
Well, I appreciate that. If I have that news, I'll come back on and talk about it. But, my goal has just been to represent the 1.1 million people here in Montgomery County, Maryland, do a good job at it, try to improve their lives. And now I'm running for re-election. And I just want to help people. That's why I became a civil rights lawyer. It's why I worked in the White House. It's why I worked on Capitol Hill. And we'll see what God has for me next. But, I think policy is a key lever, and we need good people in it. We're seeing right now in our world, in our country, what happens when you give the wrong people power. So we need good people. So I think I have a role to play in the future. But right now, focused on getting reelected.
And when is your reelection? When is the actual?
It's July 19th is the voting day, primary day in Maryland. And that's our primary. And then the general election obviously is November like everybody else, but we're focused on the primary. So we've got like 20 some odd days left.
So you are simultaneously on a book tour with your new book, and you're running for reelection. I know you're also a husband and a dad, and someone who's civically involved beyond even your elected office, because you sit on boards and, as you said, you mentor kids. And I know during the COVID, I think I was reading somewhere where you were doing some online Facebook Live, like reading clubs with little kids. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, well, we did that. I'm this like subcommittee chair for libraries in my county, and so I have 4 young children, my wife and I, Michelle. So I'm a big story time person. We read a lot of books, and when libraries shut because of COVID, there was no story time, and that's a big thing for parents across the country, and certainly in our county. So I started doing a virtual story time, and at the time we didn't know how long COVID was going to go on. So I said, I'll do it until COVID's over, and I started doing it, and I was doing it every day, reading, and it ended up turning into this big thing. We had a whole bunch of guests, like we had Cynthia Erivo, we had Dominic Dawes. It started being a big thing, and I ended up having over 100 episodes over the course of a year and a half, and we got a big following, and it was great. So it's something that I enjoy doing. I do not, now that the library is back open, I do not do it every day, but every now and then I'll do like a special one because it's just such a part of my life. But it was story time with Councilmember Will Jawando. So I think they're still up on YouTube. So if you need some stories, go ahead and check them out.
Well, that is the perfect way to put mentorship in action and to get creative. Like you said, you couldn't go into libraries, they were closed, but obviously we all got very friendly with our computers and with Zoom and Facebook Live. So thank you for doing that. And I'm sure as a dad to 4 kids, yes, you are reading a lot of books. There's a lot of story time in your house. So thank you for sharing that with other kids, not just in your county, but people could tune in all over the world.
Yeah, we had some folks from LA actually that were watching. I know.
We're looking forward to getting you out to Los Angeles with my 7 Black dads, introducing you to this community of Black fathers and mothers and parents. I'm sure you will be well received in Los Angeles. So thank you so much for sitting down with me. Good luck on your book tour. Good luck in your reelection campaign, and just keep being a bright light and a role model and mentor to so many people, even those young men and women that don't know you personally and maybe don't have an opportunity to meet you. They see you and they so appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you, Areva, and thank you for having me and sharing your platform and for all that you do to uplift so many. So you've been a role model and are a role model and mentor to so many, myself included. So thank you for having me.
Oh, be well, my friend.
All right, take care.
I want to thank Will Jawando for sitting down with me this morning and talking about his new book, My 7 Black Fathers. There is literally something in this book for everyone. You don't have to be a dad. You don't even have to be a mom. The book is really about forming meaningful relationships and finding people that you can pour into, and then those people that can pour into you. And that is so important, how we connect with people. And sometimes people think that your mentor has to be older than you or they have to be more successful than you. And I think Will debunks that myth in this book because he just talks about how important it is to form those kinds of meaningful relationships that make you as an individual, no matter how old you are or how young you are, those relationships that make you whole. So make sure you pick up a copy of this book. Like I said, it's the perfect gift to give to young fathers, young mothers, people on the journey of becoming parents, those people who are interested in mentoring, people who are already mentoring. I just think no matter who you buy this book for, they are going to thank you. Some words to live by before I get out. Our beautiful First Lady, former First Lady Michelle Obama said, success isn't about how much money you make, it's about the difference you make in people's lives. I couldn't agree with her more. And when you pick up a copy of this book, I think it's going to help you make a bigger difference in the lives of so many people. Be well out there, be safe, and remember, we're all in this together.